There's an old discussion that goes on in these teachings, and it is about the role we play in our lives and in the lives of other people if everything is predestined. That's part of our Vedantic teachings, that destiny rules, that what is supposed to happen happens, what is not doesn't happen, no matter what we try. But we do have responsibility. And I thought, I read this program in Westchester probably last month, and it had such an impact on the people listening that I said, I'll bring it to the Memorial Day weekend, because look, the house is full, and Sri Brahmananda would say, what better time than Memorial Weekend to undergo a major transformation? So let's see what can happen. I'm not promising anything, but I have the feeling that you will walk out those doors very different from the way you were feeling or the way you were reacting than you will be when you leave. So let's see what happens with this, I think, fascinating article. Before I read it, I'm going to read this, I hope, just as a reading and not comment too much unless I feel it's not clear. The title is Responsibility. It's an editorial that I found in the Ramana Ashram Mountain Path magazine. And their editors are usually extremely wise and very fine writers. This one says, our journey is principally an internal one of removing the sense of doership from all our activities. Our inner journey has the purpose of removing that feeling that I am doing something, I am accomplishing something. The chief obstacle to understanding is our mind with its habitual thoughts, its vasanas. No matter how sophisticated our mind is, and however well-intentioned we may be, invariably we become attached to our activities and their results. You can even have high activities, even this work in this ashram or in your yoga centers, high work, ennobling work, helping people. We're included in this statement. The temptation to attribute to ourselves the impersonal working of destiny is normally too great to resist. Even when we deny ourselves, there is a trace of doership, that I'm denying myself. I'm the doer who is doing that. How many times when someone says, how are you? You say, oh, I'm doing fine. I'm doing well. That's a trap. That's the ego talking. Our teacher would say, things seem to be going on nicely. Talk to me next week or tomorrow. Because he never had a sense that he was doing either well or badly, but that life was happening by itself. So where does responsibility on our part come in? It does. You listen. He asks right now, so where then is the responsibility for all we do and manifest in our existence? Are we accountable for each and every one of our thoughts and actions? Or are we just pretenders, powerless in the face of impersonal forces beyond our comprehension? Are we mere puppets on the wind? Children, I'm asking, do you understand the point of this? Is it up to destiny? Is everything in your lives just happening as an accident? Or have you had some choice I'm not asking you. I'm saying this is what is being asked here. No, you'll never come again if I keep asking you questions. I don't want to. I just want you to understand the main point here, because you're old enough to know that some things seem to be beyond our control. They just came as a lucky happening. And other things happen in a bad way, and we had nothing to do with that. So what's going on is the question here. Do we have anything to do with the good and the bad happening to us? Are we mere puppets on the wind? From an absolute point of view, we have no free will, and we are all subject to our prarabdha karma. As Sri Bhagavan Maharshi said to his mother when she came looking for him, when he ran away from his home because he had experienced enlightenment, he wrote, because he was in silence, he wrote to his mother these famous words that changed my life. The ordainer controls the fate of souls in accordance with their prarabdha karma, which means the destiny to be worked out in this life. Prarabdha karma means past karma. Prarabdha karma is the balance sheet of actions in past lives. This is Ramana Maharshi continuing in his statement to his mother. Whatever is destined not to happen will not happen. Try as you may to make it happen. And whatever is destined to happen will happen. Do what you may to prevent it. This is certain. The best course, therefore, is to remain silent, meaning watchful, watching to see what is happening next. And that's his statement. He stayed with that statement from that earliest time with his mother to his final days of his life when he was 70 in 1950. He was still saying that, and it's still, for me, the most important statement that I've ever heard. It gave me a completely different outlook about relationships, about career, about attachment. Happy are those who have surrendered in complete faith to the higher power guiding our destiny. Those are just happy. Those are surrender, like Mahalia Jackson. Nothing ever bothered that great gospel singer. She refused to have a commercial career. She could have made a lot of money singing the blues or jazz or rock and roll. She absolutely refused. She said, I don't do the blues. I don't even know the meaning of the blues. I only sing gospel. The White Star Line, which built the huge Titanic, created the safest modern ship of the day. This was the era in Europe when people believed technology was the answer to every problem, and that man's supremacy, though not complete, was assured. It was just a question of time before they would be master of all they surveyed. The Titanic was symbolic of that age's zeitgeist, deluded by its own power and false dreams. So why then did the Titanic sink? And who ultimately was responsible for the disaster? The captain, Edward J. Smith, was an experienced man brought out of retirement for this one voyage to break the speed record over the Atlantic on this prestigious new ship. The primary reasons for the disaster were attributed to a failure to take heed of radio warnings from other ships about icebergs, and to the fact that the ship was traveling too fast to take evasive action. I didn't know all these details until I read this article, and I found them fascinating. J. Bruce Ismay, a very famous name now, J. Bruce Ismay, the owner of the White Star Line, survived the tragedy and lived the rest of his life in denial that he had anything to do with it. Rescued by the ocean liner Carpathia, he looked a desolate man whose life and career were wrecked beyond repair. In the initial inquiry, he just kept repeating over and over again, "I am not in any way responsible. I am not in any way responsible." He was a bully. He was rich and arrogant, and he tried to wriggle out of the inquiries by evasion and barefaced lies, and spent the rest of his life avoiding all talk of the Titanic. One startling vignette of the actual sinking of the ship was that Ismay rowed to safety on one of the lifeboats full of women and children. He was the rower, and he claimed he never actually saw the ship sink. This is a lie, because for him to row away from the ship, he would be facing backwards and would have surely seen the calamity. If any of you know about rowing, you know he had to see the ship sinking. So the level of denial on his part is staggering. We see then in Ismay a failure of a small man to realize and accept responsibility. There was neither nobility nor heroism here. His misconduct was that of a petty man. He well illustrated Shakespeare's immortal lines, "Cowards die many times before their deaths. The valiant never taste of death but once." Now, at the other end of the scale, there is the classic Indian spiritual illustration of responsibility, illustrated by the dilemma. Anybody know what classic example is going to come up right now from India? Who said Arjuna? Oh, you got it. Arjuna and Krishna. Arjuna. The dilemma Arjuna confronted on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. In his case, urged on and advised by his Lord, Lord Krishna, Arjuna accepts his responsibility. He's a Kshatriya. He's a warrior. He's a hero. He accepts his responsibility once Krishna makes it clear to him, however horrid the consequences may be, and vigorously fought the forces of righteousness, adharma, fought the forces of unrighteousness, adharma. Righteousness, dharma, unrighteousness, adharma. We see in the modern age still another hero, Mahatma Gandhi, who accepted responsibility for the riots which erupted during the freedom struggle. His response is instructive. If we identify with any object, any ideal object or purpose, as say Gandhiji did with the voice of the people in India, he identified with the voice of the people, then we can be affected by the actions incurred over the course of time. Any identification, good or bad. We are inevitably swept along by our decision to identify with the object of our desire, whether it's gross or subtle. In our own attitude and behavior, we generally fall between these two extreme examples of an Ismay or a Gandhiji. Though there are crucial life-defining moments in our life when we are called to rise to a challenge, sometimes we are called to rise to a challenge, our life in general rarely contains an obvious black or white choice. Think about your lives. We're seldom brought to a point where we're choosing between life or death, or what is clearly a sin, clearly a saintly action. Our life decisions are in an area that is mostly gray and made up of tiny moments that, when added up, are decisive in influencing how we think and act. From small seeds, huge trees grow for both good and bad. It's like Gurdjieff telling us we have always that choice between right thinking or good thinking and wrong thinking. We can catch that when it's going on and resist and control that. Because here we're being told that it's these small choices we're being asked to make that are very important. And they will add up to that point in our lives where we are more capable of resisting something that's going to hurt us. If we constantly are transforming our thinking by means of right choices. So, the question is now, how then do we remain silent in the wave of destiny which carries us along as either a willing, joyful participant or a frustrated recalcitrant? Someone who doesn't obey authority, won't go along. So we're drawn along whether we're willing and joyful or frustrated, rebel. We're still swept up in the tide of past karma, destiny. For the purpose of this editorial, let us focus on the dangers of the negative refusal to engage with that which is before us, as those who surrender and accept responsibility for what they are have learned this lesson already. I'll read it again, it's a difficult sentence. For the purpose of this editorial, meaning what he's after, let's focus on the dangers of the negative refusal to engage with that which is right before us, as those who surrender and accept responsibility for what they are have learned this lesson already. In other words, those people who accept responsibility, they've surrendered, they don't need to hear this discussion. But those who are not recognizing the dangers of their negativity to engage with what's right before them, they have to listen. Malcontent occurs when we refuse to accept the train of events and demand instead that they be different. He's saying we're going to move right into suffering if we refuse to accept that these events are occurring and we demand that they be different. We cannot accept what's right before our eyes. We demand that they be different. We want people, we want actions to fulfill our expectations. We do not want to own up to our shortcomings. It is invariably someone else's mistake when things go wrong according to us. The attitude of why me taints our behavior when life becomes unpleasant. We find reasons to be right and just as many for another person to be mistaken. What I love best when I see it happening at this ashram, and it happens all the time, is when I see in the morning, let's say, Saturday morning, I see an argument is going on between our residents or two guests or something. And they're really going at each other, upset with something. I see it with the guests too, when they argue with one another. And what I love best is to see an hour or two later, they're together as if nothing happened. Or one comes over with a message with a completely different tone than the one that had been used earlier, because at this ashram we have been taught not to hold on to the past. And I must say, it's much easier for me to drop memory now that I'm in my 70s than it was when I was in my 30s. I'm forgiving everybody these days because I don't remember what happened. Or I don't remember clearly what happened. I don't remember what was said exactly, because we know better than to go over and over that in our minds. That perpetuates it and strengthens it. So when I see these quick changes, the flexibility on the part of the ashram residents or the guests who've been coming regularly, or close friends of mine, that's what I love the best. It's not too impressive when you go to an ashram and everybody's polite, and everybody loves one another, and there are no arguments that you see, and they are exactly the same in the beginning as they were in the end, because they are in a state of denial. They don't want to see that all is not perfect within. They don't want to see that they have contempt for some and they honor others. You know, on the surface, it looks like a perfect ashram. But if you stay long enough, you can feel there's seething going on. An ashram where they let a lot of this come out with the understanding they can drop it anytime they want is a much healthier ashram. You agree that? I'm a lesson. It's the major one that Gurji taught. He said, recognize that everybody is you. It's the same. That what they're going through, you also went through at one time. What they're feeling, you may be feeling next Tuesday, if you're not feeling it now. Don't be so hard on them, and don't be so hard on yourself. Guruji said this wonderful statement, nothing is your fault. It's the fault of conditioning and circumstances and past karma. So don't be so hard, he would tell us. And most of the people who've been here for a long time have eased up considerably on others and on themselves. It was the great lesson Guruji taught about the importance of unity at this ashram. We're not always able to do it, but we keep trying. And trying is rewarded, we have found out. I'm going to do this, okay. So suffering or malcontent occurs when we refuse to accept the train of events and demand that they be different. There are many, many psychological exercises that can ameliorate our suffering, but ultimately it comes down to one question. What does the experience teach me? And not someone else learn from this experience. What does this experience that I've been through that has caused suffering, what's the lesson in it for me? Never mind, that other person has to find out for herself or himself. I'm not here to teach others. I'm here to watch my family say that at least the denial is gone or has been transformed. I'm still working on it. negativity in the I, we will see that always we bear to some degree responsibility for its occurrence in the I. We do bear to some degree, responsibility for that negativity. He's talking to each one of us. And this is all based on Ramana Maharshi's teachings. If we unflinchingly look negativity in the eye, we will see that always we bear to responsibility for its occurrence. However minuscule our participation, we could have anticipated its disruption and taken remedial action. Is an action. That's a new thought. Not to do anything is an activity in the face of choice is consent. I will say that many times when I worked in a clinic for the emotionally disturbed, and a child had been punished or abused or mistreated, he didn't or she didn't blame the abusive parent, the one who took action, as much as the grown adult blamed the passive mother or the passive father who did nothing to stop the abuse. He blamed that one more. The other one he just felt was a loss of temper, that he was a mean-spirited father or mother. But the real blame he gave to the one who passively did nothing out of fear. The other one's probably afraid. But interesting, the passivity was taken as the greater neglect and the greater reason to be angry. Passivity in the face of choice, we are doomed to commit the same mistake over and over again until we learn this. Those who don't know history are destined to repeat it. So how do we reconcile Bhagavan's injunction to remain silent because fate will happen? Avoid it. What then of the advice to actively change our conduct by accepting responsibility for that which happens anyway? This is a conundrum that can be answered simply by another question. How identified are we with our body and mind? The moment we realize that our quandary is based on ignorance, we can see clearly. The moment we realize ignorance, we can see clarity is of the essence. The moment we realize that our quandary is based on ignorance, then we can see that we need to be clear. We have to be clear. That's essential. That's why you all know the answer. That's why we meditate. In case you didn't know, that's why we meditate. That's why we perform devotions and act to the best of our ability without an ulterior motive. All its activities clearly. The purified mind sees all its activities clearly and accepts that which our desires and fears have obscured. To see clearly releases us from the chains of identification. So it's no longer a question of responsibility, because the sattvic, the peaceful mind, the clear mind, the pure mind, now has developed the power of attention to realize the source. The I, the internal absolute I am, has no name, no form, and therefore I would give a reward to anybody who can finish the sentence. The pure mind has no name and no form, and therefore no... What? Did anybody say karma? The karma is only for the body, mind, and senses. That's why when these gurus become ill, they don't say they're ill at all. He has become ill. Body's going through the aging process. But I'm perfectly fine. However, you look depressed, you know. Anything wrong? They don't identify with the body, whether it's young and vibrant and beautiful, or aging and ill and on its deathbed. They do not feel attached or identified with that. This is the key. This is the thing. The key, I'll read the last sentence, that witnessing I, or that absolute I, has no name and no form, and therefore no karma. The key is consciousness. Consciousness is indivisible. One is either conscious or one is not. There is no partial consciousness. It is not a quality or a quantity. It is the one constant, not subject to change, and as such is unaffected by the laws of cause and effect. For us to exist, we cannot not be conscious. For us to exist, we cannot not be conscious. We cannot know it as separate from ourselves. We can only become that. When we realize it, it makes no difference then whether our desires are fulfilled or not, whether our minds are happy or sad, or whether our body experiences pain or pleasure. Whether we are an Ismay or a Gandhiji, it makes no difference, although we reap the reward with our bodies and minds. Our bodies and minds reap the rewards, but we don't need any rewards. We are perfect and complete as we are as pure consciousness, told here. The coward and the fool are part of our nature, as are the hero and wise one. Arjun's predicament on the battlefield is the same as ours. He didn't want to fight his relatives. Our thoughts are our enemies, are our negativities. Our task is to see directly that is peerless. It is untouched. Consciousness is that without a second, what we call Advaita, non-dualism. That without a second, meaning it stands alone. To do this, to see directly that consciousness is peerless, it is untouched, it is that without a second, to do this, that we be silently alert with all our heart and let loose the arrow of intention. Let loose the arrow of intention. What does that mean? If you can explain that, well, demands that we be silently alert, meaning that consciousness is untouched, and that's what we are. So we don't have to be concerned about karma. The karma of the body, mind, and senses we have to be concerned about. And that we do by being silently alert with all our heart. And arrow of intention. What does that mean? I love that. What does that mean? Don't be afraid to answer. Listen, some of you know this. One of the reasons I'm popular here is because I tell everybody he or she is right. Because we are all right. I never, as somebody presenting this material, this is an honor to do this. Our guru, he doesn't have a voice to do that. He uses our voices. So it's an honor. It's exciting to present these. And that's why I love them as much as I do. But I never feel that I know more than you. What I feel is maybe different from what you feel, but it's all right. It's all genuine. Your understanding, wherever you are, should never be criticized, because who's criticizing that if I'm criticizing? What's doing that? That's right, you can whisper it, your ego, she said. Your ego. Of course it's my ego. It's only an ego that thinks it knows something, that it thinks it's right and you're not. I wouldn't be caught with that showing. So don't be afraid to say, what does it mean? Let loose that arrow of intention. That's marvelous. What does it mean? Jeevani, you know? Who knows? Oh, tell.
My interpretation is
yes.
that,
Remember, I'll say you're right, so it's okay.
great. So I think number one, that way we'll become more intimate with our destiny, so we can hear, like, sit in silence and hear it, and then point yourself in the right direction. Kind of aim where you think you're going.
And it's wonderful. You are absolutely right. I'm not sure that we have to aim so hard. Let it loose. Let it fly. Not to be afraid. There you go. Let it happen, whatever it is. If you're ulterior, it will go to a good place. You'll go up and up and up. Because we're told all the time, just make sure, silently alert to what I'm, and to watch when negativity occurs in our life, to check what part we played in that. And that's all we have to be concerned about. Not someone else's negativity. That's his problem. We have enough of our own to deal with. See? Anybody else? Quickly? Yes. Stay focused, but at the same time, let yourself. Don't be afraid to let it fly. Let things happen. This is such a good place to continue this discussion, but we're not. Because Deepak and accompanists are waiting, and I know it's going to be a beautiful concert. Amalama and Ashok always request Deepak to come, because he lends such, as does Rupji, in the realm of music and in the realm of yoga. So close your eyes just for 1 minute. Let's time to be in the eternal, ever-present now, which will release all that is bound in us. Take a very deep inhalation and slowly release the breath. This will us to experience what your body is feeling, how your senses have perhaps come alive through these teachings tonight. Of your mind. Don't judge it, just see it with affection. Krishna Devi, if you're here, would you lead us in our traditional prayer? No. You can follow Tracy.